Is your business struggling to stand out from the crowd online? At Webamax, we specialize in turning clicks into customers. From SEO and PPC to social media management and stunning web design, we've got you covered. Boost your online presence and drive real results. Ready to take your business to the next level? Visit Webamax.com. That's Webimax.com for a free digital analysis. Roll the web with Webamax.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Jewelry can say many things on your wedding day. As a wedding band, it can say, "This is a forever symbol of our forever love." As a gift to your wedding party, it can say, "Thanks for standing up there with us." Blue Nile can help you find the piece that says it all and says it beautifully, with expert guidance and a wide assortment of jewelry of the highest quality at the best price. Go to BlueNile.com and experience the convenience of shopping Blue Nile, the original online jeweler since 1999. That's BlueNile.com.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at Marines.com.
Hi there, Duke fans. Episode 635 of the DBR Podcast. Jason Evans here, chatting with you. We're going to be completely honest. We recorded this just moments after recording episode 634. We got to have, we got to have efficiencies here. We're traveling. We're busy. We're working. We got things going on. We're watching videotape of Duke.
Watching. We're doing everything. Why?
We're doing everything.
I don't know why.
So sometimes we have to record 2 episodes back to back because we don't want to fill up your feed with like episodes that go an hour and a half. That would be difficult. So we divide them in half. Also, we have topics. It's organized, man. We've been doing this for a while. We got to be organized, right, Donald?
Oh yeah. You got to be organized. It's the summer of soccer for me. It's the summer of basketball. Apparently, we thought we'd have a nice little break here, but as we approached the NBA draft, we had so much news that we had to kind of break up this interview that we had with Jay Bilas into 2 separate parts with nice thing in the middle. So you kind of get what you get a Jay Bilas sandwich, right? Like he's the bread of the sandwich with both his comments on Cal Filipowski, which you should go back to that episode to listen to, and what we're going to talk about now, Jared McCain.
Yeah, exactly. So without any further ado, we're going to bring you in now to part 2 of our conversation with Jay Bilas. Jay is, of course, an ESPN college basketball analyst, their top college basketball analyst. And when it comes time for the NBA draft, for well over a decade, Jay has been the guy sitting on the desk next to, the hosts and the anchors, so we can talk about the various prospects in the NBA draft and what these guys are going to do at the next level. We spoke to Jay a couple days ago, as Donald said, about Kyle Filipowski. Today, we are talking to him about Jared McCain, a guy I expect to be taken probably right around the lottery, toward the back end of the lottery, maybe even higher than that. We'll sort of see. But here is our conversation with ESPN's Jay Bilas about Jared McCain and the NBA draft. Jay, Jared McCain was one of the most beloved Dukies around, even though he was only there for 1 season. Just that infectious smile and the energy. Obviously, the NBA loves outside shooting. Is that's the primary calling card for him? Do you think he has a shot at going in the lottery? As a result of just being a truly dynamic outside shooter?
Yes, I think he's one of the players that could be taken above where he's projected. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see him taken, 10 or 11, something like that. McCain, I think Reed Shepherd of Kentucky is the best shooter in the draft, but I think he's got some really solid competition for McCain. He can really shoot the ball. And, we've talked about JJ Redick taking the Lakers job. JJ's probably the best shooter that Duke's had. I would put Chip England up there if they played horse. I don't know who'd win even right now. But Jared McCain,
and I'd pay to see that. By the way, I would pay to see
fun.
that.
That'd be fun. But Jared McCain's not far off of those two. I mean, he can really shoot the ball, and you factor in the fact that he's an unbelievable worker, really dedicated and very engaging as a teammate and a person. I don't know anybody that doesn't like him. And so he gets along with everyone. He's always an uplifting presence. It's never really about him, even though he has personal goals in addition to team goals. You just don't see players like that as often as you would think. And the fact that he is the only word I can come up with is dedicated. Kind of the old cliche about, first in the gym, last one to leave, all that stuff. But he makes everybody else feel better. And how can you not want that on your team? The only downside of McCain is he's small. He's not a big guard, but I think we've seen at least over the last 10 years that smaller guards, where 15 years ago, 10 years ago, you go, well, his size is going to be a detriment. That doesn't seem to be the kind of hurdle that it was years ago. You see more small guards doing really well in the league now. And I think he's one of those guys. But the shooting piece to your original question, that's the marquee headline about McCain is, man, he can really shoot it. And when he gets on a roll, which he often does, man, like what he did at Florida State and then in the NCAA tournament, he can really drill it. And whether it's on the move or, catch and shoot situations, he's got great range and ultra competitive. There's a lot to like there.
You mentioned his height and, 6'3", again, on the smaller side of guards in the NBA, but in college, it felt like he was, right in the middle of all the guards that, of the top, Power 6 conferences. But one thing you mentioned, the 3-point shooting that does well. Another thing that I thought he did well throughout the entire season was rebound. And so when you have a guy that's that small, but can also rebound, where do you play him in the NBA? Does he need to increase his handling so he can play the point guard? Or do you think he can be that off the ball guard that maybe has to guard some of the, taller, shooting guards in the NBA?
I think he can do both. And that's really the last thing you mentioned is really the issue. I think a lot of sort of the position discussion in the NBA is based upon who you guard, not necessarily where you play on the offensive end. So, the idea of a traditional point guard, bring it up, make a call, that ball in the hands all the time, is not really the way the NBA plays now. So he can bring it up and initiate. And the fact that he sticks his nose in there and rebounds, especially on the defensive end, like the NBA over the last couple of years has become more of an offensive rebounding league than it was before. It was takeaway transition before. Now it's more, still want to take away transition, but you want to try to get more second chances and try to separate yourself by getting extra points there and extra opportunities. But especially on the defensive end, he'll go in there instead of leaking out. He'll go in, get the ball, and can start something, and he can rip and run himself. But I really like him as a prospect. But the fact, like his defensive impact, the fact that he's not incredibly lengthy and long and all that stuff, and he doesn't have a ton of size, it's an issue, but it's not. I think the shooting outweighs the issues you may have there.
You watched a lot of Jared McCain during the season. You called a lot of his games. Obviously, as an analyst on ESPN, you had to analyze Duke and Jared McCain quite a bit. Was there a point during this regular season that you thought that Jared McCain had done enough at the college level to be a first-round pick in this upcoming draft?
Yeah, pretty early. You thought you're not gonna see him next year, and I didn't know how much of it was going to be factored in by the fact that this was seen as a relatively weak draft compared to others. And I think where it's weak is at the top. Like, I don't think any player in this draft would have been drafted in the top 4 last year. Maybe 4th would have been the earliest a player in this draft would have been taken last year. So that's where it comes, but there's still a lot of really quality players. But I think having that kind of draft, or this kind of draft, kind of can entice some players out because they'd be drafted higher this year than they would be next year. The kind of what everybody's calling the Cooper flag draft, where there's going to be a lot more talented players at the top next year than this year. So there is a factor of, hey, what's my position going to be next year? Is it better to go now? All that stuff. That's certainly a factor. Is it the deciding factor? I don't know. But you saw pretty early on, especially the way he shoots the ball in transition and all that. And then he kept getting better throughout the course of the season, more confident. And I think everybody got more confident in him. And you saw, he's the real deal. He's really good.
We've talked a lot about what he does well, but if there's one thing that you think he needs to improve on at the next level, what would that be?
I think he can impact the ball a little bit more on the defensive end. But that's true of every player that goes, there are some players that are finished products defensively, but not all that many. And he's going to continue to mature and get better in every area. But I just think he's got a great mind for the game and a great attitude. And I think he understands, being an integral part of a team. And that's important. The character piece is important. You can put him in any locker room; he's going to get along with everybody, and he's going to be an energy-giving presence. And all this other stuff about painting his nails and all that other TikTok and all that. I think I can't imagine NBA teams that he's interviewed with and or worked out for haven't gone, man, this is a really good guy. And having good guys in your locker room that can play, because he's both, that's really attractive, and that's one of the reasons I think that he could go higher than the 15 projection you're seeing now.
Hey, Jay, really quickly, I want to switch to the draft in general. I live in Atlanta. I've been an Atlanta Hawks fan, Hawks season ticket holder for many, many, many years. What is my team going to do here at number 1? This is, like you said, there's no one in this draft that looks like they would be top 4 in sort of a normal draft. What would you do if you were the Hawks GM?
I don't know, because I think this year you're looking at fit more than best available player. Oftentimes you'd say best available player, but I've said this publicly. Like, there are times when I've gotten a little bit weary of the talk about this being a bad draft. I think if Jalen Brunson were coming out of Villanova this year and Tyrese Halliburton were coming out of Iowa State this year, we'd say it was a bad draft. And look how good those guys are now. And there are players like that in this draft. The question is going to be finding them. So your question about Atlanta, I think Donovan Clingan is a possibility at 1 because of his defensive ability, his rebounding ability, the fact that he can anchor a defense. And
by the way, I'm so thrilled to hear you say that. We have a mock draft that we do on the Duke Basketball Report forums, and I drafted for the Hawks number 1. I took Donovan Clingan, and people were like, wait, what? And I was like, I just see it. So yay for me.
Well, yeah, but it's possible because, Quinn Snyder's done really well with guys like Rudy Gobert, who's not necessarily an offensive threat. Gobert is a lot different than Clingan. You could see Alex Sarr going there because he's a little bit more like Gobert with his ability to block shots and the defensive presence he can be. I'm told that they really like Zachary Sachet from France, he's not like this NBA superior athlete, but he's multi-dimensional offensively, and he could be a really good pick there. But who knows? They could decide to trade it. You don't often see teams trade out of number 1 but maybe they do a deal with San Antonio or something and get 4 and 8 for one. And in this year's draft, getting 2 really good players at that level may be better. I don't know what'll be available, and maybe San Antonio sees it the same way that a team trading down would be, saying, no, we're not going to trade 2 players for one, because the one this year isn't worth 2.
Yeah.
Because they got to build around, Wembanyama. So I think there'll be a lot of trade activity in the draft, especially now that it's going 2 days. The first round is going to be on Wednesday, the 26th, and the second round is on Thursday, the 27th. So that'll be an interesting dynamic, but I see it being, Reese Shea, Sar, or Klingon, not necessarily in that order of what they would value.
Brotherhood related, draft related, Trajan Langdon has taken over as president of basketball operations for my Detroit Pistons. Started off by firing Monty Williams just a couple days ago, but what do you see as the biggest thing that he needs to overcome in this draft? They've got the 5th pick, but they've had the 5th pick for 4 years now straight, and they have a collection of young talent, but no real direction on what they want to do with it. Where do you think that Trajan Langdon goes with the situation, starting with this draft next week?
Well, first, Trajan was an inspired choice to be the president of basketball operations in Detroit. And I think the biggest thing for the Pistons is going to be putting together like the leadership challenge within the organization, from ownership to Trajan's new position as president of basketball operations, and then getting an aligned GM and coach in place. So Trajan's going to be essentially leading that whole franchise, and so he'll be the buffer between ownership and the GM and the coach and all that stuff. But I don't want to say they're starting over, but I think they have to put a program in place for the future. So it's not necessarily what do we do to make the team better this next year. That's going to be part of it. But the main thing is putting things in place so that they can have runway to be a really good franchise in the future. And I think they're capable of doing that, because they have some good pieces. But they're going to have to assess, like, what are we going to do with Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey? I think Jaden Ivey will play a lot more this next year to find out exactly what they have. And that's all going to be part of it, because they've got some good young players. Those players may have value in the trade market where they can get some veterans in there. But I think they're in a lot of ways assessing what they have and then building for the future, because that's not going to be turned around in 1 year. You don't go from 14 wins to 60 in 1 year and with the 5th pick. I don't see that happening. But boy, what a great choice Detroit made in Trajan, because he's phenomenal. He'll do a great job there.
I will trust the process, I promise.
Yeah, he's going to have to get a heated garage. I know
that. Hey, Jay, you were at K Academy just a few days ago, right?
Yes.
So you got a chance to see the next big thing. You already mentioned him a little bit earlier when we were talking to you. Give me a couple seconds here on Cooper Flagg and what you think of Duke's prospects for next year.
Well, I'm actually talking to you guys from Maine right now. I'm in Maine, first time I've ever been to the state. So I was looking around for other Cooper Flaggs and I didn't see any. But he's the real deal, and he's got you don't want to go too far back on this or get too overly excited about it, but he's got a lot of Leitner in him. He's really skilled, really talented, but he's also tough-minded, competitive. Everything you want, and he's going to be the spotlighted player in college basketball this year. Everybody's going to want to see him, and on a different level, it could be kind of Zion-like. They're different players, but Duke is loaded with talent and NBA talent. But he's the ringleader of it. He's the most talented and best player, and I think you're going to see John Shire use him in some creative ways, but get a good look, because he'll be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. I can't see anything derailing that other than injury.
I mean, that's kind of unusual that usually there's sort of someone that you go, oh, I think this guy might be. Look, people thought RJ Barrett was going to be number 1. Then it was Zion. For him to, does it feel locked in on Cooper Flag? He's that good that it's like a no-brainer. No one's going to take it from him.
I mean, you don't want to say no one's going to take it. Who knows? I mean, there are a lot of good players in next year's draft, but he's the presumptive number one. It's a different year than this last year, when early on people were saying, well, it's Isaiah Collier, or it's this guy, or it's that guy. There was really nobody that stood out quite like that. But if you were lucky enough to get the one pick, you would want it next year. You would have wanted it last year and next year.
Yeah.
And he's the guy that everybody's got their eyes on. And I just don't see, absent injury, I just don't see anything derailing that. He's just so talented, and he's got everything. And it's going to be really fun to watch. It doesn't mean he's going to be great every game or all that stuff. He's going to have the same maturation issues as a lot of freshmen, but his floor is so high, and then his ceiling is ridiculous. He's just built for the modern game. Just a tremendous prospect.
Last thing before we let you go, and you've been so good to give us so much time. The NCAA says it is at least considering. It's sent to the conferences for their comments. The fact that they are talking about expanding the NCAA tournament to 72 or possibly 76 teams. What's your feeling about that? Is more better, or, why fix something that ain't broke?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big if it ain't broke, don't fix it guy. I'm more, just because it ain't broke doesn't mean you can't improve it. And if the NCAA feels, the powers that be feels that this could improve the tournament, I would be all in on it. I just don't get it. I don't think 68 versus 64 improved anything. I think it was better at 64 because for most people, the tournament doesn't start until that first Thursday.
Yeah, exactly.
So the first 4 games are interesting to the fans of the teams in it, and it makes those teams a few bucks. That's great, but I don't think it moves the needle all that much. And if you go to whatever they're talking about, 72 or 76, does it really change anything? I think the answer is no. And I've never been a fan of the discussion, well, look at all the bowl games. X% of football teams playing bowl games. Bowl games are exhibition games. They don't mean anything. And I don't see the point of this. To me, I would have it at 64. And if they really wanted to improve things for the better teams, so we don't have a situation like Clemson, not this last year, but the year before, or what happened with Pittsburgh this year, name the teams that got left out that were good enough, then they need to examine the automatic bid process and say, do we really need teams that have very little chance of impacting the tournament other than an upset? I don't know that I really believe that's the driving force behind the tournament. I don't believe that, but maybe others do, and reasonable minds can differ on that. That's where I would look at things and say, when you have a national championship event, don't we want all the best teams in? And wouldn't that give us more interesting games than having, everybody every conference gets a bid, and then the conferences are all handing their bids out by a tournament. So you may not even get the best team out of that conference if somebody stubs their toe in their league. So right now, Reese Davis pointed this out years ago, and I probably didn't latch onto it early, but I think he was right. He was like, don't complain about not making the tournament. Everybody's in the tournament because you get your conference championship to get in. So it's really incredibly fair. You get the chance to win an automatic bid by competing against your peers to get into the tournament. And so everybody that plays in a conference tournament is automatically essentially in the NCAA tournament. No matter how bad your season was, you still have a window to make the tournament. And that's true of the ACC. It's true of the America East.
NC State last year. I mean, no better example than that.
Right,
also not anymore,
exactly.
right? Because 15 out of 18 teams are going to make the ACC tournament going forward. So there's still going to be 3 teams that are left out. Another topic for another day. But yeah, in essence, it's like the World Cup. Everybody in the world gets a chance. If you mess up, then that's on you.
Right. And so to me, the only reason that you would expand the tournament is for money. And I don't mean that in a greedy sense, but if you could provide more inventory to your media partner and all of a sudden, you're making more money, you could distribute it out, that's great. But other than that, I just don't see the point of it. Now, reasonable minds can differ on that, and maybe they expand it. Like going to 68, hadn't heard interest in it, but did it increase interest in it? I don't think so. I don't think it did. The interest really starts, like, I'll tell you one thing, like every bracket challenge you go into doesn't factor in the first 4 games unless you pick one of those teams to be in the main draw. It's not like you lose points when you don't pick the right winner in one of the first 4 games.
Well,
and I always thought it was funny. Why did they call it first 4? It's a Final Four with 4 teams, and the first 4 has eight teams. That makes no sense. 4 games, like, what are they doing? I never.
The other thing about those first 4 games is if you pick one of those teams to advance, let's say you pick them to have an upset in the first round, maybe you can get to the Sweet 16. It doesn't matter which of the first 4 teams wins. Like, you're taking both those teams essentially. It does. Most brackets don't require you to have an individual team there. It's whichever team wins their first 4 game, which shows you, how devalued those games are.
Yeah, and they're not widely watched. I watch them, you watch them, but they're not rated the same. It's not the same feeling. But look, it's all good. I just don't understand why we're doing that. It's sort of more people want to get in. Coaches think they'll save their jobs and they won't. I wish it worked that way, but it doesn't. It's kind of like the 20 game threshold. It used to be if you won 20 games, you're good. You can win 20 games now, you're still going to get fired if you don't make the tournament and if you don't win the right 20 games. But competitive balance is a big discussion in college sports, and it's coming up now because athletes are getting paid, and people know now that man, you got to have players to win. And so now they're looking at, well, if you can pay more for a player, you can win more, things like that, when it doesn't necessarily work that way. But what I would say, if the NCAA wants true competitive balance, they should revenue share among each other. And so take the big pile of money that everybody's making and dole it out. That's when you'd get a lot of efficiency. You dole it out the same to everybody that's in Division I that plays basketball, and then whoever makes the best decisions with their money, just like in the NBA or NFL, they win. But they're never going to do that. You're never going to see the SEC or the Big Ten share their money. That's not going to happen. So the truth is, they don't really care about competitive balance. It's just something they say to limit players.
All right, Jay, this has been great, man. You've given us so much of your time, so much insight. We really appreciate it. Have fun on the 2. You're doing both days of the broadcast, right?
No, just the first day. The second day on Thursday. So I'm doing the first round. The second day is going to start like at 4:00 Eastern time, and it's going to be primarily an NBA free agency presentation. The way I'm told, I'm not going to be there. But I'm going to be in Barclays Center for the first round. So it'll be much better for my bladder. 2 rounds in a row at my vintage age. Using the restroom is always a consideration.
I love it. Thanks a lot, man. We appreciate you all the time for coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Adios. Once again, our thanks to Jay Bilas. Great interview with him. We appreciate it every year. It's been like 4 or 5 years now we've been doing this with him, where he gives us his insight into the Dukies in the NBA draft. By the way, Duke, very fortunate that every year we have multiple guys to talk about in the draft. It is very, very cool that happens. But we're going to take a quick break now. On the other side, Donald and I will react a little bit to what Jay had to say about Jared McCain. We're going to talk also about what Jay spoke to us about regarding the NCAA tournament and the possibility for it to expand by 4, maybe 8 more teams. We'll have all that after this commercial break.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, oh, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I'm Victoria Cash. Thanks for calling the Lucky Land Hotline. If you feel like you do the same thing every day, press 1. If you're ready to have some serious fun for the chance to redeem some serious prizes, press 2. We heard you loud and clear. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com right now and play over 100 social casino-style games for free. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
Donald, we are back from the break, and let's talk a little bit about what Jay had to say about Jared. Jay Bilas' comments on Jared McCain. I'll start with this, Donald. Let me ask you. Lottery, yes or no? Jared McCain, what do you think? Is he going to be a lottery pick or maybe go just a little bit after it?
You know, Jason, if I'm not mistaken, the Sacramento Kings are sitting there at 13th, which is just at the end of the lottery. And, you know, I could really see him landing there, especially if the Kings think that they're going to lose Kevin Huerter in free agency. They're going to need another shooter. They just re-signed Malik Monk to a 4-year deal, so they're going to want more shooting. Jarrett not only slides right into that roster and that lineup, but obviously he's from Sacramento, and that'd be a great homecoming for him and his family. So I say like the beam for Jared McCain, and he's going 13 to the Kings.
I mean, that's certainly it's a good spot. It makes a lot of sense. I don't know where he necessarily fits. I think that this isn't a draft that is so deep that teams are really picking for need. I think for the most part, teams are like, okay, who's a guy I think who can be in my rotation? And I'm not sure. I don't think, just in terms of his maturity, his physical strength, where his body is, I don't think Jared McCain, even if he goes, I think there's a possibility a team falls in love with his shooting. He's arguably, you know what, he's, I guess, Reed Shepherd, Dalton Connect, and then Jared McCain probably in this draft. And you know, I'm not going to tell you that Jared McCain isn't a better shooter than either Reed Shepherd or Dalton Connect, but those three guys stand out as the sort of three most elite outside shooters in this draft. And it's very possible that a team falls in love with Jared McCain at, you know, 10 or 11 or so. That would not be bizarre for me, considering how much the NBA loves outside shooting. But my point was going to be, I don't think that Jared McCain is going to come in to a starter kind of position immediately from day one. But we know he is a incredible worker. He is a guy who tries to figure out exactly what it is he needs to do to get better and then puts in maximum effort to accomplish that thing. So I'm very confident that even if maybe he isn't a huge player in year one in the NBA, boy, by the time probably late in his first season and starting with his second season, I think Jared McCain is going to be a really, really good NBA player. And whichever team drafts him, this is a draft with a lot of uncertainty. I don't think there's a lot of uncertainty around. To me, there's not a lot of uncertainty around Jared McCain. He's too good a shooter. He is too hard a worker. He's too good at finding his own shot for him not to be effective at the next level.
Yeah, and I mean, there's obviously things that he'll improve on, right? He'll improve on his defense, and And he's not going to be a 3-and-D guy, but he's going to be a guy that can fill it up, right? It's not just a 3-point shooting. We saw a lot of those floaters in the lane, which is a very NBA move, right? You'll see a lot of guys do these floaters in the lane, 10, 12 feet, maybe even 8 feet to get to the rack. He can hit free throws. He can, again, shooting threes is one of the things that's going to, bring him on the floor. But some of these other qualities are going to keep him on the floor. And the only thing that'll take him off the floor is if he's not good at defense, which I think, again, his work ethic, I have no problems with saying that he is going to improve in that area exponentially as he moves forward.
So the next thing I want to talk about is the topic we brought up with Jay at the very end of the conversation with him, which is this notion that the NCAA tournament may be expanding to 72 or 76 games, 72 or 76 teams, I should say. Donald, I'll go ahead and tell you, they want to do it, fine. I don't think it provides meaningful revenue, because those earlier games just they haven't been ratings grabbing. When you fill out a pool, I mean, we mentioned this when we were talking to Jay, when you fill out a pool, it's like no one picks those games. Those teams they're like lumped together into one spot that sits there on the 12 line. Is it Virginia or Kansas State? They're the same team as far as everybody picking the bracket is concerned. And I don't know that that it's all that different if you add a few more of them. And okay, rather than just the 11 or 12 seeds, it's also the 10 seeds, or maybe also the 9 seeds that are playing in this play-in game, so to speak, situation. It just doesn't make a difference in terms of revenue. So I'm not quite sure why they would do it. I mean, yeah, it was unfortunate that Pitt and Indiana State got left out. I think both those teams had shown they were capable of perhaps making some noise in the tournament. But you know what? If you don't want to get left out, rather than expanding to 72, how about you play well enough to be one of the top 68? That's to me, that's a better. Pitt, win one more game, Pitt. Indiana State, win another game, win your tournament, and then you'll be in. Why are we? I don't know. I don't know. I just don't get it.
I mean, I agree with you. I agree with Jay that the expansion doesn't seem like there's a point to it, right? Like, as you mentioned, the first 4, nobody's watching. I mean, they're watching them, but no one's like really watching them like the first day. The first day of the tournament for everybody is Magic. That Thursday at noon Eastern time, when that comes on and you're just like, oh, I'm here. I am in, locked in. This is where I agree with or disagree with Jay. I think, as I mentioned when we talked to him, like the World Cup, I think every team should have a chance to get into the NCAA tournament and win it. You do that through your conference tournament, right? And I think that all the automatic qualifiers should not be a part of this first 4 of this play-in. I think if you're going to expand it, you do it and you make it where the 16 seeds that they always have in that first 4, those 2 games, I think they should be eliminated. I think you keep the 16, you keep those teams in it. If you win your conference tournament and you get your automatic qualifier, they should not be punished by making them play a play-in game to get into the actual tournament. That should be restricted for those bubble teams that swear that they deserve to be in there. Like you mentioned, Pitt, you feel disrespected? Okay, win the play-in game against Mississippi State or a Drexel or some of the guys. Virginia Tech, you feel slighted? Play Colorado. It should be the 10, 11, and 12 seeds that are doing this, not the automatic qualifiers that should be in this thing. And so if they do this expansion, again, I don't think they should, because it's not adding anything to the tournament in my mind, except for maybe more games on Tuesday and Wednesday for us to watch while we prepare for the actual first round of the tournament. But it's got to be where if they do it, then the big schools want more team, or big conferences want more teams in there. Cool. Make them play it through it. Don't have, America East conference have to fight it out with the MEAC to get into the tournament, because those teams have earned the right to be in the tournament through winning their conference tournaments. Yeah, they may not have a snowball's chance of winning, but that's why we play the games. That's why we have upsets. That's why we have the magic that is March Madness.
The only thing I will say is this. If they do this expansion and you have more power conference teams, because the primary motivation for this is the power conferences want more of their teams getting in. If you have more power conference teams, that's going to mean more fans, because the power conference, no offense to the America East and the MEAC, but the power conference teams have a larger alumni base and have a more, maybe not more passionate, but there's more interest in those teams nationally, because we've just heard of them more. If you have a few more power conference teams in here, then maybe it makes those play-in games a little more attractive, a little more interesting. You know, that Pitt versus Mississippi State game, that's a little more interesting than Mississippi Valley State versus, I don't know, Nichols State, whatever. I'm just pulling names out of my hat, but you get what I'm saying. And maybe you start to get a little bit of some ratings. Maybe you start to get people who are picking pools that include those earlier games. Maybe you start to really feel like, as opposed to it just being 4 games, if it's 6 or 8 games, maybe it starts to feel like it really is part of the tournament. And then suddenly, magically, you've begun to create something that does have a little more value. I don't know that that's going to happen, but I'm saying that's possible. Again, especially if you have bigger name teams from the power conferences that are involved in that, which is what I think is pretty likely to happen. And in that case, then maybe you've created something where there is some value to it and you're bringing extra money.
I think the only issue with that, I actually like that. I think the only issue with that is that they kind of tried that already by calling the play-in the first 4. They called them the first round for a couple of years, remember?
Right.
And then they called it the second round and third round or whatever they called it.
Which just confused the heck out of everybody.
It confused people, and people hated it because they're like, these games are not the first round of the tournament. These games are the games you want us to watch for us to complete our bracket. That's it. But if they make it, they have to figure out how to make those games feel like more than a play-in. Because once you say the word play-in, people dismiss it out of hand as just some games that need to be done to complete the tournament. It's almost, honestly, in some people's minds, no better than these low major conference tournament finals, right? Like, it's just a game that we see a couple of teams play, and one of them is going to play in the big dance and the other one's going to go home, but with a big dance share. So they have to figure out how to label this and market it so that those games are just as important as the rest of them in the first round. And they just haven't figured out a way to do that yet.
All right, so we're going to move on to one more thing. And this connects, I guess, a little bit to conference expansion and all that other kind of jazz. David Bradley, who is sort of the guru of Duke's social media stuff. If you have not heard that name before, this is someone who is really significant in establishing the Duke brand and continuing to build it.
O-Quad. He's O-Quad. Class of 2004. Let's go.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Oh, yeah,
cool.
he's our guy.
Yeah. In any event, David Bradley sent out a tweet the other day that I just want people to be aware of. He pointed out that the ACC/ESPN payout to each school was about $105 million over the past 3 years for, football, college hoops, and stuff like that. He then went into the statistics of what Duke did in terms of football and basketball games, in terms of eyeballs watching. The Duke football was watched for 3.8 billion viewing minutes, and Duke basketball generated 9.3 billion viewing minutes. That includes postseason games, non-conference games, all that stuff. Sorry, it doesn't include postseason games and non-conference games, but that's just, in conference. That's part of the ACC ESPN deal. And the thing that he pointed out that I think is really interesting is this. When you combine Duke's football and basketball together, they became the fourth highest viewed program in the ACC in terms of broadcast value, in terms of viewing minutes over the past 3 years. I'm sorry. I hear all this stuff about conferences expanding, about, the ACC being in trouble. Oh, everybody wants Clemson and Florida State and UNC, and no one talks about Duke. Look at the numbers, people. The Duke Blue Devils are the fourth most watched program in men's football and men's basketball in the ACC. I don't understand why, if there's going to be all this crazy, shuffling around of conferences, if you're the SEC and the Big Ten and you're looking to maybe pick up the scraps from the ACC, I don't know why Duke isn't in the conversation, because the numbers say they should be.
It's the numbers, and also it's funny. There's certain numbers that we accept and some that we don't. What's the one thing that when we talk about, all this expansion, what's it coming down to? TV dollars, right? And when we look at TV dollars, we think of one thing: TV ratings. And we had that, that study back then that had TV ratings for certain schools. They were averaging, well more than 1 million viewers per week in college football. And we were like, okay, that's fine. We're not one of those schools. But there's only one school that was doing that in basketball, or two schools that are doing the basketball. It was UNC and Duke. and Duke was way above UNC in that regard. And then, like you mentioned, when you combine the two, you present something that goes, hey, Duke is right there with everybody else. All these teams that we think are being watched by so many more people than Duke. And it's because it's all revolving around football. And I think as football becomes better, as football becomes more relevant, as they have been over the last couple of years, that number is going to go up. So you're even going to have even more of an uptick in our combined score, our total broadcast value, because people view football as king. And if we're not mattering in football, then people don't think we matter at all. I think that's the reason why we're being slept on. But at the end of the day, basketball is going to be where it is. If football gets up, I'm not asking football to generate 9.3 billion view minutes. That's a lot of eyeballs and a lot of minutes and not enough time, right? If you think about it, there's like maximum of 14 football games in a year for Duke. Exactly. There's a maximum of 40 games for basketball. So that some of these things are skewed, but if you get that number getting closer to the 5 billion viewing minutes range, that's a lot more exposure. That's a lot more people talking about you. That's a lot more people wanting to view you and view your brand. And all these players are going to see the benefit of that in NIL in terms of social media and the branding behind all that. So there's a lot that goes into this. But at the end of the day, Jason, I think the point is clear. Duke is one of the commodities that people should be looking at. If the ACC is to ever split up, Duke is probably in that room with everybody else. And if people want to sleep on them, do so at their peril, because Duke brings a brand that not a lot of schools can match.
Amen, brother. All right, with that, we're going to wrap it up here in the latest edition of the DBR podcast. Look, if there's huge news, if something big happens, we'll be back. But otherwise, I think we are probably going to take a little bit of a break and wait till the NBA draft is done and then come back and talk a little bit more about what's going on with Duke. I say that, and I've cursed us, Donald, haven't I? Something's going to happen.
There's going to be a trade. Someone's getting traded.
Yeah.
Heard it here first.
Yeah. By the way, I've heard the Atlanta Hawks are talking to the New Orleans Pelicans about Brandon Ingram.
That's what could happen. That's what I'm saying.
It could happen. All right. For Donald, I'm Jason. Thanks again to our buddy Jay Bilas for providing us with all the great content that he does. Thanks to Dave Bradley for providing us with great content on the Duke social media team. Oh my goodness. What would we do without both those two people? I don't know. We wouldn't have many podcasts, that's for sure. Thanks to all of you for listening. And thanks for writing to us. You can do that. dbrpodcast@gmail.com. I will not take this any longer now. I've said enough thank yous. He's Donald. I'm Jason. Duke Band, it's your turn. Play us out. Take us home.